The HOA board members used community funds to host a $5,000 private party at a country club. My name is Daniel Price. I'm 42 years old, and I've lived in this neighborhood for over a decade. I've seen plenty of petty HOA nonsense over the years. Letters about my trash bins, fines for a cracked driveway, even complaints about the shade of beige I used to repaint my garage door. But nothing prepared me for what we discovered last month. It all started with a casual post on our neighborhood Facebook group. A neighbor uploaded a picture of our HOA president, Randall Green, dressed in a tuxedo, glass of champagne raised high, grinning ear to ear under the sparkling chandeliers of the Willow Creek Country Club. At first, I scrolled past it, thinking it was some personal event. But then, another photo surfaced, this time of the entire HOA board, Green, the vice president, the treasurer, their spouses, all seated at a long banquet table with silver platters, chocolate fountains, and wine bottles lined up like trophies. The caption under that photo made my blood run cold. HOA Gala, paid for with your money. The first rumors. Within hours, our group chat was buzzing. People were asking, is this true? How much did this cost? Why weren't we told about it? At first, Green tried to brush it off. He commented under one of the posts, this was an official HOA function, necessary for networking and future partnerships. But homeowners weren't buying that excuse. The more photos that appeared, the angrier people became. There was a live jazz band, an open bar, steak dinners plated like something out of a cooking show. And then, thanks to a sharp-eyed neighbor who worked in accounting, we got the real kicker. The evidence Sarah, who lives just 3 doors down from me, managed to get a hold of the monthly HOA bank statement. She texted it to a handful of us late that night, and sure enough, the evidence was right there in black and white. Willow Creek Country Club, $5,000, $5,000, gone in one night. That was more than the landscaping budget for 2 whole months. More than the funds set aside for street lamp repairs. More than most of our annual dues. It was like being slapped across the face. For years, homeowners had been fined for the smallest things. $75 for a trash bin visible from the street, $50 for slightly overgrown grass, $100 for having a guest park in the wrong spot overnight. And all that money we thought was going toward maintaining the community was instead being funneled into lobster dinners and champagne flutes. The anger builds. The next morning, I walked outside, and the neighborhood was buzzing. People who never usually talked to each other were suddenly in huddles, on porches, at the mailbox, in driveways, passing around printed screenshots and venting. Mark, a neighbor known for being quiet and reserved, was storming up and down the sidewalk, waving the bank statement. They made us pay for this, he shouted. $5,000 of our money. While we've been begging them to fix the potholes, they've been throwing themselves parties. Jennifer added fuel to the fire. The playground still has broken swings. They told me last year there wasn't enough money in the budget to replace them. But apparently, there's enough for filet mignon and free-flowing champagne. Even Mrs. Alvarez, who rarely gets involved, spoke up. She reminded everyone how she was fined last month for leaving her recycling bin visible a few hours past collection. She was nearly in tears as she said, they're nickel and diming us for rules they don't even follow themselves. It was the first time I'd ever seen the entire neighborhood unified in anger. The meeting explosion. That week's HOA meeting was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Normally, only a handful of people show up, maybe 3 or 4 bored homeowners and the board members running things. But this time, the community center was packed wall to wall. People stood in the back, others leaned against the walls, and the tension was so thick it felt like the room could burst. Green and the other board members sat at the front of the room, looking nervous. For once, their usual smug confidence was gone. When the floor opened for questions, Sarah stood up immediately and slammed a copy of the bank statement onto the table. Mr. Green, she said, her voice sharp but steady, would you like to explain why $5,000 of homeowner dues were spent at the Willow Creek Country Club? And please, don't tell us it was for networking, because I don't see how steak dinners and champagne benefit this community. The room erupted with applause. Green stammered, trying to regain control. This was a professional event, necessary for the reputation and future of our neighborhood association. But the crowd wasn't having it. A professional event? Mark shouted from the back. Then why weren't homeowners invited? Why wasn't it discussed in the budget? Why wasn't it voted on? You've been fining us for the smallest things, while you're throwing yourself private galas with our money. The board squirmed in their seats. The treasurer kept shuffling papers, refusing to look up. Green kept insisting it was justified, but his words only fueled more anger. The turning point. By the end of the night, the board was cornered. Dozens of homeowners demanded immediate resignations. Green refused, insisting everything was above board. But it didn't matter anymore. The trust was gone. People left that meeting furious but energized. Neighbors who'd never even spoken before were suddenly swapping numbers, making plans, and whispering about recalls. That night, for the first time in years, I felt like the homeowners weren't powerless anymore. The scandal had ignited something, a fire that wasn't going out anytime soon. This was only the beginning. The week after the meeting felt like the neighborhood had been flipped upside down. People who used to wave politely and go back into their houses were suddenly stopping each other in driveways, knocking on doors, and holding whispered conversations in front yards. The private $5,000 party had been the spark, but it was quickly becoming clear that this wasn't just about one night at a country club. It was about years of questionable decisions, fines, secrecy, and arrogance from the board. The first secret gathering. It was Sarah's idea. She sent out a group text. "We can't just let them get away with this. Meet at my place Friday evening. Bring any paperwork, letters, or fines you've gotten from the HOA. We need to figure out what we're dealing with." That Friday, about 15 homeowners crowded into Sarah's living room. Some sat on folding chairs, others stood, holding binders and manila envelopes. For the first time, people laid everything on the table. Jennifer brought copies of her fine notices for yard debris. Mark brought his stack of letters about improper mailbox paint. Mrs. Alvarez brought a photo of her recycling bin that had earned her a $100 fine. And then David, one of the quieter homeowners, walked in with a thick binder. He dropped it on the coffee table with a heavy thud. "These," he said, "are the HOA's annual reports from the last 7 years. I've been keeping track, because things never seem to add up." We all leaned in as he flipped through the pages. His notes were meticulous, color-coded tabs, highlighted sections, handwritten calculations in the margins. And there it was, year after year, thousands of dollars categorized as miscellaneous expenses, consulting fees with no explanation, inflated landscaping costs that didn't match the work being done. And now, of course, the $5,000 event. "This isn't just incompetence," David said grimly. "This is mismanagement at best, and at worst, it's theft." The anger deepens. The room grew heated. People shouted over each other, venting about years of frustration. "They fined me $200 because my daughter's bike was left on the porch overnight," one man yelled. "They sent me 3 violation letters for a flower pot color," another woman added. "All this time, they've been bleeding us dry while living it up on our dime," Jennifer said, shaking her head. Mrs. Alvarez spoke softly, but cut through the noise. "We've been bullied. That's what this is. They punish us, while they reward themselves." Silence followed her words. She was right. The plan forms. By the end of the night, the group had a plan. Collect evidence. Every letter, every fine, every financial document. They would put together a file of proof. Call for transparency. A formal written demand for the board to release detailed financial records. Start a recall. If the board refused to cooperate, the homeowners would petition for a vote to remove them. But before the night ended, Sarah said something that made everyone pause. "You realize they won't go quietly, right? Green has been running this board like his personal fiefdom for years. If we push back, he's going to push harder." The group exchanged uneasy glances, but no one backed down. The neighborhood shifts. Over the next week, the neighborhood transformed. What had once been a quiet, controlled community now felt like a brewing rebellion. Homeowners who had been silent before were suddenly speaking up. At the mailbox cluster, people exchanged notes. On evening walks, residents stopped to whisper updates. The Facebook group, once dominated by the board's announcements, was now filled with homeowners posting questions, photos, and even memes mocking the $5,000 party. The HOA tried to do damage control. Green sent out an email titled "Clarification Regarding Recent Concerns." In it, he claimed, the party was an annual appreciation event. The cost was within budget. And most insultingly, that homeowners were misinformed about how funds were spent. But instead of calming things down, the email poured gasoline on the fire. People were furious at being dismissed as if they were children who didn't understand money. The first confrontation. The tipping point came when Mark confronted Green directly. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Green was inspecting lawns like he often did, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, strutting from yard to yard as if he owned the place. Mark saw him coming down the street and stepped off his porch. "Hey, Randall!" he called out. Green turned, plastering on his fake politician smile. "Afternoon, Mark. Lovely day, isn't it?" Mark didn't smile back. "Tell me something. How exactly does spending $5,000 on steak and champagne improve my property value?" Green's smile faltered. "I've already explained. It was unnecessary." "No," Mark cut him off. "You didn't explain anything. You threw a party for yourself. And you did it with our money." By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching from their driveways. Green tried to keep his composure, but his voice sharpened. "Homeowners don't dictate how every single decision is made. That's why we have a board. You elected us to make the tough calls." "Then maybe," Mark said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "it's time we elect someone else." The neighbors clapped. Green's face turned red. He turned on his heel and stormed off, muttering about ungrateful residents. The movement becomes real. That night, Sarah's group chat blew up. Dozens of new homeowners asked to be added. Someone designed flyers titled, "Take Back Our HOA," and printed stacks to distribute. The movement was no longer just a handful of frustrated residents. It was spreading like wildfire, and for the first time, the board realized they were losing control. This was no longer about a single party. It was about power. The week after Mark's confrontation with Randall Green felt like living under a spotlight. The board wasn't just upset. They were retaliating. The first wave of retaliation. On Monday morning, several homeowners woke up to violation notices taped to their doors. Jennifer got fined $150 because her garbage can was visible from the street for 4 extra minutes after pickup. David received a $200 fine for unapproved garden edging that had been in his yard for 5 years. Mark, unsurprisingly, was hit the hardest, $300 for clutter in his driveway, which turned out to be his kid's basketball hoop. By Wednesday, nearly a dozen families had received fines. The timing was too obvious to ignore. They're targeting anyone who speaks up, Jennifer said, slapping her fine notice on Sarah's kitchen table during another late-night meeting. This isn't enforcement. This is punishment. Everyone nodded. The mood was darker this time. Less shock, more anger. The board's warning. On Thursday, the HOA sent out a mass email titled, Community Conduct and Misinformation. It read, certain individuals are spreading misleading and harmful claims about the board. This behavior threatens the harmony of our community. We remind homeowners that fines, liens, and legal action may be pursued against those who refuse to abide by HOA rules or engage in defamatory behavior. Your cooperation is expected. The threat was clear. Speak out, and you could lose more than just money. You could risk your home. The neighborhood buzzed with fear. Some residents backed off, not wanting to risk it. But others, like Sarah, saw it for what it was, intimidation. They're scared, she told the group. That's why they're lashing out, which means we're getting to them. The evidence pile grows. Meanwhile, David's binder kept growing. Every notice, every fine, every email. He filed it, indexed it, and cross-referenced it with the HOA's financial reports. What started as 1 binder was now 3, each thicker than a college textbook. And the numbers didn't lie. The miscellaneous category wasn't just suspicious. It was massive. Nearly $60,000 had been spent over the last 5 years without explanation. Consultants, events, administrative costs, David said, pointing to the highlighted entries. It's the same pattern every year. They're siphoning money, and they think no one will call them on it. Jennifer leaned in. Then let's call them on it. The petition that weekend, the homeowners launched the petition. We, the undersigned, demand a special meeting to vote on the removal of the current HOA board members due to misuse of funds, intimidation of residents, and failure to uphold fiduciary duty. They needed signatures from 25% of homeowners to force the vote. Within 2 days, they had nearly half. People were slipping flyers into mail slots, knocking on doors, and even standing by the mailbox cluster with clipboards. The neighborhood, once silent under Green's rule, now buzzed with quiet rebellion. Green strikes back. But Green wasn't going down without a fight. On Monday, he called an emergency board meeting, closed to homeowners, of course. Rumors flew about what was discussed, but by the next day, everyone knew the result. A new notice went out. Due to recent disruptive behavior, the board has authorized additional security patrols and legal review of defamatory statements made against the HOA. And sure enough, by nightfall, a private security SUV was parked at the entrance to the neighborhood. The message was clear. The board was doubling down. The first cracks in the board. But here's what Green didn't expect. His own allies were wavering. Rumors began to spread that not every board member had even been invited to the $5,000 party. Some were kept in the dark, just like the homeowners. And when residents started confronting them at the mailbox or grocery store, cracks began to show. Mrs. Alvarez spotted one of the quieter board members at the pharmacy. When she asked about the finances, he sighed and said under his breath, "Look, not all of us agreed with that party. Green runs things his way. Some of us don't even see the receipts." It was the first real sign that Green's control might not be as absolute as it seemed. The turning point. By Friday, Sarah's group had more than enough signatures. They delivered the petition to the HOA office, hand-delivered, photographed, and notarized to prevent Green from losing it. The board was now legally required to hold a recall vote. When Green heard, neighbors swore they saw him pacing in his driveway that night, phone in hand, barking into it like a cornered animal. For years, he had ruled the community without challenge. But now, for the first time, he was on the defensive, and the homeowners weren't backing down. This wasn't just about fines anymore. This was about justice. The petition had worked. The homeowners had done the impossible. They forced the board's hand. A recall vote was coming. But if anyone thought Randall Green was going to roll over, they underestimated just how far a desperate man would go to protect his throne. The propaganda begins. 2 days after the petition was filed, every mailbox in the neighborhood received a glossy, full-color flyer. At the top, in bold letters, "Stop the chaos. Protect our community." Below it was a list of claims. Certain individuals are spreading lies about your elected HOA board. These troublemakers want to destabilize property values and cause division. Don't let them destroy the harmony of our neighborhood. And at the bottom, a smiling photo of Green shaking hands with a local councilman, like he was some kind of benevolent leader. The irony? The flyers had clearly been paid for with HOA funds. Jennifer nearly ripped hers in half when she saw it. "He's using our money to campaign against us," she shouted at the group meeting. "This isn't a homeowners association. It's a dictatorship." Whisper campaign. The flyers were only the start. Soon, whispers began circulating around the neighborhood. At the playground, one mother leaned in to another. "I heard Sarah wants to dismantle the HOA entirely. Imagine what would happen if we had no one to enforce rules. This place would turn into a dump." At the mailboxes, someone muttered, "David's just mad because he got fined. This is personal for him." By the weekend, the smear campaign had painted the recall organizers as radicals, troublemakers, and even anti-community agitators. But Sarah knew exactly where it was coming from. "This is Green's playbook," she told the group. "Divide us. Make us look unreasonable. If neighbors start doubting us, he wins." The legal threat. Then came the letter. Delivered by certified mail, it bore the intimidating header, Law Offices of Carter & Wells. It accused Sarah, Mark, and David of defamation against the HOA and its board members, threatening a lawsuit unless they ceased spreading false and damaging claims. Sarah read it 3 times, her hands shaking. They can't actually do this, right?" David, ever the researcher, dug through legal forms and HOA case law. "It's a scare tactic. Defamation requires proof. They don't have a case. They're just trying to bleed us dry, with legal fees." But the intimidation worked on some. A few of the petition signers quietly asked for their names to be removed. Fear was spreading. Breaking the silence. But then, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Alvarez, the 72-year-old retired teacher who had lived in the community the longest, showed up at the next gathering. She walked in with her cane, dropped her own flyer on the table, and said, "You kids are doing the right thing. Don't let that man scare you. I've watched him bully people for years. Enough is enough." Her words carried weight. Neighbors respected her, and with her backing, some of the wavering residents started to feel braver again. Jennifer smiled. "If Mrs. Alvarez isn't scared, then I'm not either." The security theater. Not to be outdone, Green ramped up his Law and Order Act. The security SUV at the neighborhood entrance was now patrolling twice as often. A guard even stopped a group of teenagers on bikes, demanding to know if they lived here. "It's like we're in a prison camp," one father muttered as the SUV crawled past his driveway. Green spun it differently. In his next email, he wrote, "Thanks to your board's foresight, our community remains one of the safest in the county. Increased security ensures our homes and families are always protected." But everyone could see it for what it was. Fear theater. The cracks deepened. Meanwhile, the quiet murmurs from inside the board kept growing. Another board member, this time Linda, who mostly stayed silent at meetings, was overheard complaining at the grocery store. "I didn't sign up for this circus. Randall makes all the decisions, and then we all take the blame." When word got back to Sarah's group, David grinned. "Perfect. If even 1 or 2 of them flip, Green's empire crumbles from the inside." The breaking point. The tension came to a head at the next open HOA meeting. The clubhouse was packed, standing room only. Neighbors filled every chair, every corner, buzzing with nervous energy. Green sat at the head of the table, flanked by the other board members, his smile tight and his eyes sharp. He opened with the usual script. "Your board has always acted in the best interest of this community." But he didn't get far. Mark stood up and interrupted. "Then explain the $5,000 country club party. Explain the consulting fees. Explain the fines you're using as weapons. We're not here to be lectured. We're here for answers." The room erupted, some shouting in agreement, others murmuring nervously. Green slammed his gavel. "Out of order," he barked. "Anyone disrupting this meeting will be removed." But this time, no one sat down. The turning tide. For the first time in years, Green had lost control of the room. And as Sarah looked around, at the neighbors standing taller, at Mrs. Alvarez nodding firmly in the back, she realized something. The smear campaign, the threats, the intimidation. It had all backfired. Instead of scaring people into silence, Green had pushed them to the edge. And now, they were ready to fight. The recall vote was coming. And Green was about to learn that ruling by fear only works until people decide they've had enough. The night of the explosive HOA meeting left the neighborhood buzzing. For the first time, the board had been openly challenged, and Green had lost control of the room. But Sarah knew better than to think it was over. Green wasn't the kind of man to accept defeat. If anything, this was when he would become most dangerous. The emergency amendment. A week later, homeowners received a thick envelope in the mail stamped, "Urgent Community Notice." Inside was a letter from Green and the board announcing an emergency amendment to the HOA bylaws. Recall elections now required a 75% supermajority to pass. Any challenges to board financial decisions had to be filed within 14 days of the expense. Homeowners who owed any amount in dues or fines, even a single late fee, were ineligible to vote. Read it out loud at their kitchen table. He's rigging the rules. He knows he can't win fair. Mark slammed his fist down. He's choking us out. Between the fines and dues hikes, half the neighborhood won't even qualify to vote anymore. David, calm as always, leaned back. This isn't just unethical. It's illegal. You can't change bylaws without a proper vote. And you sure as hell can't do it in the middle of a recall effort. But they all knew one thing. Challenging Green in court would take time, money, and energy most homeowners didn't have. And Green was counting on that. The lawyer's visit. 2 nights later, Sarah's doorbell rang. On her porch stood a well-dressed man in a tailored suit, holding a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Caldwell?" he asked. "I'm Mr. Rourke. I represent the HOA board." Sarah stiffened. "What do you want?" He handed her a thick packet of papers. "Consider this a professional courtesy. My client intends to pursue damages if these baseless accusations continue. We're talking defamation, harassment, interference with HOA operations." Sarah skimmed the document, her pulse quickening. The demand? $50,000 in damages. Her voice cracked. "This is insane." Rourke smiled thinly. "Or maybe it's just business. Sometimes it's easier to stop fighting and let the board do its job." Then he tipped his head and walked away, leaving her shaking on the porch. Fear takes hold. Word spread quickly. Sarah had been threatened with a lawsuit. Some neighbors panicked. Emails flooded the group's inbox. "I have kids in college. I can't risk being sued. I can't afford to fight lawyers. Maybe we should just let this go. It's not worth losing everything." For the first time, doubt crept into Sarah's mind. Were they really ready for this fight? Green held all the power, all the resources, and now he was weaponizing the law itself against them. Mark saw the look on her face that night and gripped her hand. "Don't you dare give up now. That's what he wants. If we back down, we prove him right, that he can bully his way through anything." A hidden leak. Then came the break they didn't expect. David, ever the watchdog, got a call from someone he didn't recognize, and the man's voice was low, shaky. "My name's Tom. I used to work for Green. Did bookkeeping for the HOA, he whispered. "I can't stay quiet anymore. You should know. There's more, much more." "What do you mean?" David asked, his heart racing. "Those consulting fees? The parties? That's just the surface. Green's been funneling HOA money into his own private accounts, shell companies, fake vendors. I've seen the transfers myself." David froze. "Do you have proof?" The man sighed. "Not copies. Green made sure I never left with paperwork. But if you subpoena the records, you'll find it. It's all there." Then the line went dead. The audit plan. When David told the group what he'd learned, the room went silent. Jennifer finally broke it. "So he's not just corrupt, he's stealing." Sarah's voice hardened. "Then that's how we beat him. Not with petitions, not with protests, with proof. If we can expose what he's done, even the most loyal board members won't be able to cover for him." David nodded. "We'll need an independent auditor, someone who can look at the books and confirm the irregularities." Mark smirked. "And I know just the guy. My cousin's a CPA who loves tearing crooks like this apart." The room erupted with cautious hope. For the first time, in weeks, they had a plan. Green strikes back. But Green wasn't sitting idle. The following week, every homeowner received another HOA email. This time, Green declared that the recall movement itself was under investigation for fraudulent petition signatures. His words dripped with authority. "It has come to our attention that many of the recall petition signatures were obtained under false pretenses, and some appear to be duplicates. Your board is committed to protecting this community from illegitimate challenges and will pursue all necessary legal remedies." Neighbors began to panic again. Some who had signed the petition called Sarah, demanding their names be withdrawn. "He's turning the whole thing into a circus," Jennifer groaned. "We're fighting with facts, and he's fighting with fear." The tipping point. Despite the chaos, Sarah's group pressed on with their audit plan. But just as things seemed to stabilize, another bombshell dropped. David came running into the meeting, pale and breathless. He dropped his laptop on the table and pulled up the county's property records. "Guys, Green doesn't even live here anymore." Everyone leaned in, stunned. David pointed at the screen. "Look, his official residence is listed in another county. He sold his property here last year, but he never told anyone. He's been running the HOA without even being a homeowner." The room exploded. "He can't do that," Jennifer shouted. "That's fraud," Mark added. Sarah sat in silence, her mind racing. This wasn't just corruption. This was the smoking gun. To be continued. The homeowners now had leverage they never dreamed of. Green wasn't even legally eligible to sit on the board. But if they moved too fast, Green would bury them in lawsuits, smear campaigns, and intimidation before they could act. And if they waited too long, he'd find a way to cover his tracks. The war for the neighborhood wasn't just about money anymore. It was about survival. The night David revealed Green's secret, that he wasn't even a homeowner anymore, the living room fell into stunned silence. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the property records on David's laptop. The words seemed too unbelievable to be real. Property sold, residence transferred, new address registered. Jennifer whispered, almost afraid of her own voice. If this is true, Green's not even legally allowed to sit on the board. He's been running everything. Illegally. Mark let out a bitter laugh. That means every decision he's made, every fine, every fee, every emergency amendment, it's all invalid. Sarah clenched her fists. And we've been paying for it. Literally paying for it. The plan to expose him. David leaned forward. We can't just shout this from the rooftops. Green will call it fake. We need to present it in a way no one can deny. At a public board meeting, with records printed, notarized, and ready to distribute to every homeowner. Jennifer frowned. And what if he finds out we know? He'll do everything in his power to bury this before it sees daylight. Mark smirked, his eyes hard. Then we keep our mouths shut until the moment of impact. No leaks, no whispers. When this bomb goes off, it'll be in front of the entire neighborhood. Sarah exhaled slowly, determination building in her chest. Then it settled. We prepare for the next board meeting. That's where we bring him down. Green gets suspicious. But Green wasn't blind. He could feel the shift in the air. Homeowners who used to avoid Sarah now smiled at her in the street. Groups gathered in whispers on sidewalks, conversations cutting off when he walked by. At the next informal coffee chat he hosted, barely 5 people showed up. That night, Green called an emergency meeting with his inner circle, the board members still loyal to him. They're plotting something, he growled, pacing the room. I can smell it. Caldwell and her crew. They think they're clever, but I'll crush them before they get a chance to act. One of his allies, Mrs. Whitmore, shifted nervously. You're sure, Arthur? They're just noisy neighbors. Maybe if we explain... Explain, Green snapped. You think facts matter? Perception is power. And I control perception. He already had a plan. The smear campaign. 2 days later, homeowners opened their inboxes to find an email titled, The Truth About the Recall Group. In it, Green accused Sarah, Mark, Jennifer, and David of spreading false documents, harassing elderly neighbors for signatures, intentionally sabotaging HOA projects to make the board look bad. He even included blurry photos of them gathered in Sarah's living room, taken from outside her window. Jennifer nearly dropped her phone when she saw it. He's spying on us now? Mark's face darkened. This is war. He's not even pretending anymore. But the smear campaign worked, at least partially. Some neighbors grew hesitant again. A few even confronted Sarah in the grocery store. I thought you were trying to help us, one woman said coldly. But now, I hear you're just trying to stir up trouble. Sarah walked home that night with her heart heavy. Every step, she asked herself, are we really going to win this? Or is Green too powerful? Reinforcements. Just when morale was crumbling, Mark's cousin, the CPA, arrived with his audit notes. I've been digging through the HOA's public filings and bank transfers, he said, spreading papers across Sarah's dining table. And it's worse than you think. Green isn't just sloppy. He's criminal. He pointed at highlighted lines. Look here. Payments to Westbrook Consulting, $12,000. But there's no such company registered in the state. Then this, $7,500 billed for landscape assessments, but the vendor's tax ID belongs to a car repair shop 2 counties over. It's money laundering, plain and simple. The group exchanged stunned looks. Sarah whispered, so now we have 2 smoking guns. He doesn't live here, and he's stealing. David smiled grimly. This isn't just a recall anymore. This is exposure. Green doubles down. But Green wasn't going quietly. The week of the board meeting, Sarah received another letter. This one more threatening than any before. It read, Notice of Legal Action. The HOA board is preparing to pursue damages against any individuals spreading defamatory claims about board members. Civil action is pending. Monetary penalties could exceed $100,000. You're advised to cease and desist immediately. Sarah's hands shook as she read it. But instead of fear, she felt something sharper ignite inside her. Anger. She walked into the living room, where Mark, Jennifer, and David were waiting. She slapped the letter on the table. He wants to scare us? Then let him try. Because when the truth comes out at that board meeting, he won't have a leg to stand on. The calm before the storm. The night of the board meeting arrived like the quiet before a hurricane. Cars packed the community center parking lot. More people showed up than Sarah had ever seen. Residents who had never bothered to attend before, now buzzing with curiosity and unease. Sarah clutched the folder of documents in her lap. The property records, the audit notes, the vendor reports. Her hands trembled, but her resolve was iron. Mark leaned close and whispered, This is it. Once you say the words, there's no going back. Sarah nodded. Good. I don't want to go back. Inside, Green sat at the head of the table, smiling smugly, like a king addressing his subjects. But Sarah noticed something. For the first time since this battle began, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. To be continued. The showdown at the board meeting has arrived. Sarah and her group are ready to drop their evidence in front of the entire community. But Green isn't walking into this unprepared. And the moment Sarah opens her folder, she'll discover he has one last trick up his sleeve. The community center was packed, every folding chair filled, the air thick with tension. Homeowners fanned themselves with agenda sheets, whispering rumors about what was going to happen. Some looked curious, some impatient, but many looked angry. At Sarah, at Green, or maybe at both. Sarah sat with her folder balanced on her knees. Inside were the documents that could destroy Green's reign. Property records proving he didn't live in the neighborhood, and the audit trail showing thousands of dollars funneled into fake vendors. Her heart pounded so hard, she wondered if everyone could hear it. At the front of the room, Green sat at the long table with his loyal board members on either side. His suit was pressed, his tie perfectly knotted, his smile wide and theatrical. He looked every bit the confident leader, but Sarah caught the flicker in his eyes whenever he glanced her way. Sharp, wary, defensive. He tapped the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending. Tonight's meeting will cover standard updates, budget adjustments, landscaping contracts, and, unfortunately, the issue of certain residents spreading falsehoods about this board." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sarah's pulse quickened. He's going on the attack first. Green's offensive. Green leaned forward, voice dropping into a somber register. "For weeks now, a small group has circulated baseless rumors. They claim your dues are being misused, that your board is corrupt, even that your leadership is illegitimate. These are serious accusations, dangerous lies meant to divide us." He held up a stack of papers, shaking them for emphasis. "I have here statements from vendors, contractors, and residents who confirm these rumors are nothing more than a smear campaign. And tonight, I will ask for the community's support in putting a stop to it once and for all." The audience buzzed with nervous energy. Some nodded in agreement. Others looked skeptical. Sarah's hands tightened around her folder. She could feel Mark's steadying hand on her shoulder. Jennifer's whispered, "Now or never." And David's quiet. "We've got your back." She stood. Sarah takes the floor. "Mr. Green," she said, her voice steady, though her stomach churned, "you've accused us of lies. But the only lies in this room are coming from that table." The crowd gasped. Green's smile twitched, but he quickly recovered. "Ms. Caldwell, this is not your turn to speak. Please sit down." Sarah didn't move. "With respect, this is exactly my turn. I have evidence every homeowner here deserves to see." She walked to the front, her heels clicking against the linoleum, and placed her folder on the table. Slowly, deliberately, she spread the documents across the microphone stand. "This," she said, holding up the first sheet, "is the deed to Mr. Green's former property. He sold his home last year. He does not live in this neighborhood anymore. By our bylaws, that makes him ineligible to serve on the board. Every decision he's made since then is invalid." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Green's jaw clenched, but he raised a hand. "Fabrications. Old paperwork. She doesn't know what she's talking about." Sarah slammed down another sheet. "And this is a property tax statement from his real address, 3 miles away. You don't pay taxes here because you don't live here." Gasps. A man in the back shouted, "Is this true, Green?" He opened his mouth, but Sarah cut him off. "And it gets worse," she said, flipping to the audit papers. "These are bank records. Payments made with our dues. $12,000 to a company that doesn't exist. $7,500 to a mechanic shop masquerading as a landscaping vendor. Where did that money really go, Mr. Green? Into repairs? Into services? Or into your pocket?" The murmurs grew into an uproar. Some residents were on their feet, shouting questions, demanding answers. Green's last trick. Green stood, his face red, but his voice still dripping with authority. "Enough! These so-called records are fakes, fabricated by Caldwell and her friends to slander me. And if anyone doubts me—" He snapped his fingers, and one of his loyal board members handed him a folder. "Here are signed affidavits from licensed vendors stating they were paid for legitimate work." He thrust the papers into the air. "Do you really trust a group of malcontents over sworn legal testimony?" The crowd wavered, torn between fury and confusion. Green had come prepared. Sarah's stomach dropped. She hadn't expected him to bring counter-documents. What if people believed him? What if her evidence wasn't enough? But then David stepped forward. "Funny thing about those affidavits," he said loudly. "We ran the company names through the Secretary of State's business registry this morning. None of them exist. Not one. You can call them licensed vendors all you want, Green, but they're ghosts. And everyone here can look them up themselves in 5 minutes." The crowd gasped again, louder this time, with a different energy, angry, electric. A woman shouted, "So where's our money, Green?" Another man yelled, "I want every dime accounted for." Green's face twisted. He tried to shout over them, but the voices drowned him out. For the first time, he looked small. The turning point. Sarah raised her voice above the chaos. "We've been lied to. We've been stolen from. And it's time we take our HOA back. Tonight, right here, I'm calling for an immediate vote to recall Arthur Green from the board." The room exploded. Cheers, shouts, applause. Neighbors who had once avoided Sarah were now standing, clapping, chanting. Recall, recall, recall. Green pounded his fist on the table. This meeting is out of order. You don't have the authority. But Sarah turned to the crowd, ignoring him. All those in favor of recalling Green, raise your hands. Dozens shot up instantly. Then more. Then nearly the entire room. Green froze as the sea of raised hands glared back at him. For the first time in years, he was outnumbered, outpowered, cornered. To be continued. The recall vote has been called, and Green is losing control of the narrative. But he's not the type to step down quietly. He still has influence, loyal allies, and tricks left. And Sarah? She's about to find out that removing him from the board might be harder and more dangerous than exposing him. The air in the community center was electric. Voices overlapping, chairs scraping as neighbors stood to shout, cheer, or demand answers. Sarah could barely catch her breath. She had expected resistance, maybe even silence, but not this tidal wave of support. Hands were raised across the room, nearly unanimous. Green's loyalists were a tiny cluster now, looking nervous and shrinking under the glare of the majority. Jennifer leaned close, whispering, "We've got him. He's done." But Sarah didn't celebrate, not yet. Green's face told her everything. He wasn't a man defeated. He was a man plotting. Green slammed both palms on the table, rattling the water pitchers. His voice boomed through the microphone, cutting through the noise. "This vote is invalid," he barked. "You don't have the authority to recall me at a public meeting. The bylaws are clear. Only the board can initiate a recall process. And as long as I'm president, this discussion is closed." Boos erupted from the crowd. People shouted back, "We're the homeowners, not you, and we have the right to vote." Sarah raised her voice. "The bylaws also state that board members must be property owners, Green. And you're not. Which means everything you've said tonight, every decision you've made for months, is illegitimate. You can't hide behind rules you don't even qualify for." The crowd roared in approval. But Green wasn't done. He pulled out his phone, waved it in the air. "I'll have you know, this entire meeting is being recorded. Every slanderous word, every baseless accusation. When my attorney sees this, you'll all regret it." The threat sent a ripple of unease through the room. Some neighbors shifted nervously. Lawsuits were expensive. Even if Green was bluffing, fear was his weapon, and he wielded it like a sword. A community stands tall. Before Sarah could answer, Mark stood. His voice was calm, but carried across the room. "Let him record. Let him call his lawyer, because we're not afraid anymore." He turned, addressing the room instead of Green. "All of us have been paying dues. All of us have the right to know where that money went. If Green wants to fight us in court, fine. But he won't be fighting Sarah. He'll be fighting every single homeowner here." Applause thundered through the room. Green's face reddened further, veins standing out on his forehead. Jennifer added, "We'll also be contacting the state HOA ombudsman and filing a complaint with the Attorney General's office for financial mismanagement." "You want to talk legal action, Green? Fine. Let's put it all on the record." More cheers. The tide had shifted permanently. Green loses his grip. Green tried to shout over the noise, but the chants started again. "Recall, recall, recall," echoing off the walls. His own board members, the ones who had always stood by him, now looked uneasy. One woman slid her chair back, edging away from him. Another buried his face in his papers, refusing to meet his eyes. Finally, one of them spoke, voice trembling. "Arthur, maybe it's best to step aside until this is sorted." Green whipped toward him, eyes blazing. "Traitor!" But the damage was done. The cracks in his fortress were widening. Sarah stood taller, projecting her voice with everything she had left. "You can shout, you can threaten, but you cannot silence the truth. This neighborhood deserves better. And tonight, we're taking it back." The storm after the vote. By the time the meeting ended, Green stormed out of the building, his phone pressed to his ear, muttering threats of lawsuits and consequences. His once loyal board trailed behind him, looking shaken, unsure whether to follow him into the fire or abandon ship. Neighbors surrounded Sarah, thanking her, patting her on the shoulder, asking what came next. David whispered, "You know he's not done. He'll try something. He's the type who'll burn the place down before letting go." Sarah nodded. She knew. Green might have lost the crowd tonight, but he wasn't finished. If anything, his desperation would make him more dangerous. Jennifer murmured, "We'll need to be ready. He's going to fight tooth and nail. Maybe even try to overturn the vote." And Sarah, though exhausted, felt something she hadn't in months. Resolve. "This isn't over," she said. "It's just beginning." To be continued. The community has finally stood up to Green, and the recall movement has real momentum. But Green isn't leaving quietly. He's threatening lawsuits, clinging to technicalities, and plotting his next move. The fight is no longer just about misused funds. It's about whether an entire community can wrestle back control from a manipulative leader who refuses to step down. The morning after the recall meeting, Sarah thought she might finally breathe. For the first time in months, she had gone to bed with a sense of victory. Neighbors calling her a hero. The chants of "Recall, recall," still echoing in her ears. But by sunrise, the storm had returned. The letter. A thick envelope appeared on Sarah's doorstep. The logo on the corner made her stomach twist. Law offices of Brandt and Fuller. She tore it open, hands trembling. Inside was a cease and desist letter. You are hereby ordered to immediately halt your campaign of defamation, slander, and disruption against Mr. Arthur Green and the Homeowners Association. Failure to do so will result in civil litigation seeking damages no less than $250,000. Her chest tightened. $250,000. It wasn't just an intimidation tactic. It was financial annihilation. She looked down the street. Other neighbors were gathering on porches, waving similar letters. Mark held his up in disbelief. Jennifer crumpled hers in fury. Green had struck back, not with votes, but with lawyers. Fear creeps. In that night, the neighborhood group chat exploded. I can't afford a lawsuit. Maybe we should just drop this. What if he actually wins in court? We could lose our homes. This isn't worth it. Sarah read the messages with a heavy heart. Green's strategy was working. Divide them with fear, isolate the loudest voices, and watch the movement collapse. But she also saw glimmers of courage. He's bluffing. Lawyers cost money too, and he's already drained the HOA account. We can't back down now, not after last night. Sarah typed slowly, choosing her words carefully. If Green could silence us with one letter, he would have done it months ago. He's scared. That's why he's lashing out. We'll find legal support. We'll fight this together. Her phone buzzed with a flood of thumbs-up emojis and words of encouragement. The fear was still there, but so was defiance. Green's smear campaign. Within days, flyers appeared in mailboxes. Glossy, expensive, full-color pamphlets with bold red headlines. Don't let a small group destroy our community. Photos of Sarah, Jennifer, and Mark were plastered across the page, labeled troublemakers, accused of spreading lies and sabotaging progress. Green painted himself as the victim, an honest leader under attack by radicals who didn't understand how difficult it was to run a community. At the next town hall, Green arrived in a tailored suit, flanked by 2 attorneys and a new security team. He spoke with rehearsed charm. These so-called reformers don't care about you, he told the crowd. They only care about power. They've endangered our neighborhood with baseless accusations, costing us precious time and resources. Do you really want people like that making decisions for your homes? Some nodded hesitantly. Doubt was creeping back in. Green had always been a master manipulator, and with money behind him, his words carried weight. The pushback. But then Mark stood. His voice shook, but his anger carried him. Arthur, don't talk about resources when you blew $25,000 on a party and called it a board retreat. Don't talk about time when you spent months ignoring repairs while pocketing our dues. You're not a victim. You're a thief. Gasps filled the room. Green's face twisted, but before he could respond, Jennifer rose. And these lawsuits, these flyers, all paid with our money. Community funds spent to attack community members. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know, I don't know what will. The applause this time was louder, sharper, angrier than Green expected. Sarah took a deep breath and added, We're not afraid of your lawyers, Arthur. We're not afraid of your lies. We're not leaving. And if you want to drag us through the courts, fine. We'll drag the truth in right alongside you. The room erupted. People clapped, shouted, even stood on chairs. Green tried to regain control, but the noise drowned him out. A war on 2 fronts. By the end of the week, the neighborhood was split. Some homeowners, terrified of lawsuits, quietly sided with Green. Others doubled down with Sarah's group, volunteering to pool funds for legal defense, filing complaints with state regulators, and demanding a forensic audit of the HOA's finances. The battle lines were no longer just political. They were legal. They were financial. They were personal. David said it best as he stood on Sarah's porch one late night, exhaustion in his eyes. This isn't just about getting rid of him anymore. It's about survival. Either Green destroys us, or we finish what we started. Sarah looked out at the quiet street, knowing every darkened window hid a family wondering what tomorrow would bring. She clenched her fists. No, she said firmly. He doesn't get to win. Not this time. To be continued. Green has unleashed his most dangerous weapons yet. Lawyers, smear campaigns, and intimidation tactics designed to break the community's spirit. But Sarah's group refuses to back down. The fight is escalating, into courtrooms, into the media, into a battle that could decide the very future of the neighborhood. The air in the neighborhood felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for a storm that refused to break. Sarah woke each morning with a knot in her stomach, the cease and desist letter taped to her fridge like a constant reminder of the war they were fighting. Green had thrown down the gauntlet. Lawsuits, smear campaigns, intimidation, and now it was up to them to decide if they would crumble or fight harder. The unexpected ally. On a gray Monday morning, Sarah received a call from an unfamiliar number. Is this Sarah Whitaker? A calm voice asked. Yes, Sarah said cautiously. My name is Linda Morales. I'm an attorney with the State Department of Consumer Affairs. We received multiple complaints about your HOA. I'd like to meet with you to discuss potential violations. Sarah nearly dropped the phone. The regulators had actually listened. That evening, Sarah, Mark, and Jennifer met Linda at Sarah's kitchen table. The lawyer spread out a thick binder of statutes and case files. I've reviewed your HOA's bylaws, financial filings, and the complaints you've submitted, Linda said, adjusting her glasses. What Mr. Green has done isn't just unethical. It may be illegal. Misappropriation of funds, misuse of community resources, intimidation of homeowners. These are serious issues. Mark leaned forward. But he's got lawyers, money. He's already trying to sue us. Linda gave a small, knowing smile. Then it's time we take him to court, not the other way around. Green's counterpunch. Green, however, wasn't slowing down. The next HOA newsletter, printed in glossy color at community expense, featured a giant headline, Defending Our Neighborhood from Radicals and Outsiders. It accused Sarah's group of conspiring with political operatives to seize control of the HOA and claimed the recall movement was funded by special interests.
It was laughable, but some homeowners bought it. At the grocery store, Sarah overheard whispers. At the mailbox, one neighbor turned away coldly. He's poisoning them, Jennifer muttered. He knows if...
He can't win legally. He'll win socially, by turning us into pariahs. But Sarah shook her head. He's desperate. Desperation means he's slipping. The first hearing. 2 weeks later, the homeowners packed into a cramped county courthouse. On one side sat Green, smug in his tailored suit, flanked by two high-priced attorneys. On the other sat Sarah's group with Linda Morales, armed with thick binders of evidence and the quiet confidence of someone who had seen men like Green fall before. The judge entered, and the room hushed. Green's attorney stood first. Your Honor, these individuals have waged a defamatory campaign against my client. They have disrupted the operations of the HOA, spread false information, and caused irreparable harm. We seek damages of $250,000. The judge raised an eyebrow. Noted. Ms. Morales? Linda rose smoothly. Your Honor, the evidence will show that Mr. Green misused HOA funds for personal gain, including, but not limited to, a $5,000 country club party, unauthorized consulting fees totaling $25,000, and legal expenses spent on silencing homeowners. Furthermore, we will present records of intimidation, violations of state HOA statutes, and potential fraud. My clients are not disruptors. They are whistleblowers. The crowd of homeowners crammed into the gallery erupted in murmurs. Green's smug smile faltered. The evidence unfolds. Over hours of testimony, Sarah and her neighbors laid out their case. Photos of neglected common areas, bank statements showing suspicious withdrawals, emails where Green dismissed repair requests but approved luxury expenditures. The pièce de resistance came when Linda produced an anonymous packet mailed to her office, receipts showing Green had billed the HOA for business retreats that were, in fact, vacations at a seaside resort. Gasps rippled through the room. Green's lawyer scrambled, objecting furiously, but the judge allowed it. Green's face flushed deep red. The turning tide. By the end of the hearing, it was clear. Green was cornered. The judge set a follow-up date and warned Green's attorneys that serious financial improprieties could lead to both civil penalties and referral for criminal investigation. As the gavel struck, the gallery erupted in applause. Green stormed out, barking at his lawyers, but his usual confidence was gone. For the first time, Sarah saw not a tyrant, but a desperate man clinging to power. Back in the neighborhood. That night, the group gathered at Sarah's house. Laughter and relief filled the room, though exhaustion clung to them all. Jennifer raised a glass of wine. To standing up when everyone else wanted to sit down. To not letting Green bully us into silence, Mark added. Sarah smiled, but her eyes were serious. This isn't over. He's going to hit back harder. But now, he's not just fighting us. He's fighting the law. The group clinked glasses, their resolve stronger than ever. To be continued. The courtroom battle has begun, and Green is finally facing real consequences. But desperate men fight the hardest when they know they're losing. The neighborhood has won a battle, but the war is far from over.